Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bob Luz, and I'm going to get started and introduce this and then hand it over to our esteemed presenter today. I know that there are some people still rolling in, and they'll catch up with us, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. This is our kickoff set of webinars that hopefully are going to help prepare membership to move forward and get ready for reopening our restaurants and what that's going to look like and how to navigate the new normal, or as I'd prefer to call it, the temporary normal. I want to say we're going to get past this and hopefully get back to where we were at some point. So I'm not giving it the new normal. I'm giving it the temporary normal type of aspect. To kick us off, we thought it would be a great place to start with opening our restaurants safely in the COVID-19 era, and we asked someone who's well known within the Massachusetts Restaurant Association, Lisa Berger, who's done a tremendous amount of work for us over the years. A lot of folks obviously know her from ServSafe and probably have been through some of her programs over the years. But she's so much more than that. Obviously, she's one of the most ever-present folks in terms of safety, in terms of public health. She's an expert. She did get a degree in a master's degree in public health. She worked for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health as an epidemiologist. Big words, Lisa, I get stuck on those, and really was responsible for a large swath of Massachusetts. But more so, she's really worked with our industry very, very closely with a number of high-profile clients and companies inside and events inside. And like I said, and has worked with us a number of times on different programs. So Lisa's come up with a really great program here. And I'm going to turn it over to her and thank her for spending our time here. I'm going to tell everybody we're continue to bang down the doors, and we're going to hopefully have a dates and a timeline here real soon. So please stay with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa. Let's get us ready, Lisa, please, and thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much for the really generous introduction. What I'd like to do is spend a good 30-40 minutes going through some of the guidance that we have for getting our restaurants open safely in our COVID-19 era. So it would be great. I think everybody's on mute at this point. What I would like to do when I'm done is leave a good 15 minutes for a Q&A session. You're welcome at the end to turn off your microphone so you can speak up, or if you want to put a question in the little chat and I can have Renee or Bob or somebody there let me know what the question is. But I kind of want to start with the history of how this started. Very much like the rest of you, early March, we had this big shock that our country was being shut down. We were being put into shelter-in mode because of this new disease we've never heard of, COVID-19. What the heck is this? And I remember being in shock, one that had a huge impact on my business as well as your businesses. And we started getting calls from a lot of you folks saying, what do we do? How do we remain open? Can we operate? Can we do takeout and delivery? So we started working with people to kind of navigate these new waters. And then about mid-April, probably mid-March, I guess, early April, we started to getting a whole slew of new types of questions, places that were open or wanting to open, but they had questions about what to do with their employees. Their employees were presenting with COVID-19 symptoms. Can they come to work? Can they not come to work? If they don't come to work, when they can they come back? And then we started getting questions about, okay, my employee's been in contact with a case of COVID-19, what do we do? So we started to put together some FAQs for these very questions because we were getting a ton of calls. And then late April, early May, we started getting questions about how do we get reopened? What do we need to do? The guidelines out there were very confusing, so we decided to help you out. We went through the CDC guidance documents, we went through FDA guidance documents. There were it was to the point where there were so many documents. It was so confusing. For our staff, it was confusing. And for people that don't have the same amount of time to do this, like you folks in the industry, it was even more daunting. So we pretty much cultivated and collected as much information as we could. And we continue to do this every single day because, as you know, the guidance and recommendations are changing weekly, if not daily. We have tried to put the best practices, the CDC guidance, the FDA guidance into one action plan and present it to you so that it's going to be a lot easier to kind of get back into. I like what you said, the temporary normal, not the new normal. So hopefully it won't be the new normal. But what I'd first like to start with is, all of you are aware, the Massachusetts Governor's Office put in a specific plan for all businesses to reopen. This was about a week ago. So all essential businesses and then businesses that will be reopening. There were 3 critical components for Massachusetts specifically. For any business, and this includes my own as well, our consulting business here in Boston, that all businesses by, I believe it was the 25th, had to develop a COVID-19 control plan. In addition to this, they are requiring that all businesses, and it doesn't matter what type, it's consulting, it's dog groomers, it's bowling alleys, whatever's going to be open, that they have some type of self-certification requirements, that they do have some documentation that they are self-certifying. And then all these businesses had to have the following posters. So one of them, and if you're interested, if you haven't seen these, I can give some direction later on where to find these posters. But one of the posters, which we have clearly in our front foyer right now, is a poster that indicates that you are compliant with the new COVID-19 recommendations for Massachusetts businesses. Another poster that they have that you are required to post is an employer poster. And I don't know how well you can see this on your computers. Some of you may even be on your phones on this webinar. It's probably very small if that's the case. But poster for the employers that they have to put up, and it talks about some of the basics that we all know: the social distancing, the hygiene protocols, staffing of the operations, cleaning and disinfecting. And then another poster that's nearly identical to that is an employee poster. Whether you're a restaurant, a hair salon, a dog salon, whatever business, you are required to have these posters available. What we don't have is a lot of specific guidance for restaurants in terms of what the requirements are going to be. And what I find, which has been very difficult, there's a lot of information out there coming from a lot of different states and different organizations, from the CDC, the FDA. Some of it is very wonderful. Other stuff that's being posted is not actually correct or not very accurate. So in light of this, and in light that we don't have the restaurant guidelines for Massachusetts specifically, I wanted to talk about what we have put together. And just to let you know, before we did put this out, we wanted to get some feedback from the regulatory agencies. So we initially went to the FDA. We had 3 FDA regional health specialists review this plan. We got the green light from them. We then presented this to the New Hampshire Food Protection Program, who went through the program, loved it. They gave us a little bit of advice to include into this plan. We took it to the Massachusetts Food Protection Program about 2 weeks ago, and then had a follow-up meeting on this a week and a half ago. And I was very excited. One of the persons at the Massachusetts Food Protection Program said, "I have 2 words for this program, this action plan: spot on." So we're very excited that hopefully this will be accepted in Massachusetts when we finally are able to open up our doors. So we put together some actionable steps that the industry can take for a safe and successful reopening. And I tried to make it as easy as possible. So I put it into 7 very actionable steps. And the order of steps I have are in order that these need to be done. So these 7 steps, I'm going to just review them quickly right now, and then I'll go into them one by one and go into a little more detail. And then I'm going to show you a checklist that we put together that is intended to be used on your phone. That's an interactive checklist with all the knowledge and videos and references that you might need. So the 7 steps that we put together, number 1 is making sure that we have enough supplies. I'm sure a lot of you have, at least initially in March and in April, when you were trying to order sanitizers, hand sanitizers, trying to order face masks, trying to order some of the disinfectants, they were not available or you were put on a wait list. So that's one of the first things that I indicated needs to be done in order to get open. Procedures need to be developed, specific procedures that I will go into detail about, but how are you going to handle all the new recommendations? What are your guidelines going to be for when employees or contractors enter your facility? How are you going to handle the cleaning and disinfecting of all the frequently touched surfaces? My third step is, and this is a critical step which needs to be done before opening, is making sure that your staff is trained. And what I have found, I have been reaching out to a lot of our clients. I've been talking to some industry folks that we have never worked with. And what I'm hearing is that a lot of their employees that are going to be coming back to work need training. A lot of the information they're getting about COVID-19 symptoms or mitigation procedures are coming from, I'll just say, unreputable sources. And so I really feel like the training of really what COVID-19 is about, mitigation procedures, how to protect themselves, how to protect the other employees, is very, very important. Step number 4 is notifying business partners who you work with in order to get your operation open. 5 and 6, steps 5 and 6, this is the big bulk of this. This is getting your kitchen prepared. This is getting the front of the house prepared. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specific recommendations that we have. And then for this self-inspection that is required by Massachusetts businesses, I will then get out of this presentation mode and jump into an inspection program that hopefully will help you navigate this very kind of challenging process here. So the first step that I had mentioned is making sure that you have enough supplies. I had a client asking me initially in, I believe it was early March, to find masks or some types of face coverings. And this is before we were getting recommendations on how to make our own face coverings. But we had called every single resource available on where to find masks. And really, there was nothing available. So make sure that if you don't have masks that you can give to your employees, at least they have instructions on how to make their own. Hand sanitizers, another requirement. This is going to be for all of your entryways. So any guests or employees coming in, if they aren't able to wash their hands, they need to be able to, at a minimum, use a hand sanitizing gel or a wipe. If it's a gel, it has to have an alcohol content of at least 60%, no more than 95%. Disinfectants. This is one of the big issues that I've noticed working with a lot of different places. A disinfectant is not a sanitizer. And I think in the past, we've used these two terms interchangeably, or we assume that they are interchangeable terms. They are not. So the sanitizer you're using is great, but you need to have a disinfectant that is approved against the coronavirus. And I'm gonna get into more detail there. Gloves, I know that for a while it was really hard to get gloves. We put in a big order about 3 weeks ago, and we received 1 box that will last us maybe a week. But making sure that you have enough gloves. Obviously, you need to be using gloves in the back of your house. Employees are handling any ready-to-eat foods. But now it's also recommended when we are handling equipment, single-service items such as takeout containers, napkins, straws, or cups. We don't want to be transferring this virus from our hands to another surface. I have goggles here with a question mark, and the reason for this is most states, cities, towns are not requiring this, but it's a suggestion that I have for people specifically that you have goggles just to protect your eyes. And it's not for every day, but the intention here is if somebody gets sick, whether it's an employee or a guest, and you have to take care of them, the person who's taking care of them will need to have something covering their eyes so they don't have that contamination there. A non-contact thermometer. I've looked at a lot of other states' websites on their guidance or recommendations for reopening restaurants, and quite a few are requiring that employees check their temperatures upon entry. The issue is it should be a non-contact thermometer, like a laser thermometer that you use in the kitchen. I had ordered some, oh gosh, 2 months ago, and they just arrived 2 days ago. Without a non-contact thermometer, it's very difficult to be monitoring for employee temperatures, particularly if they might be sick. The next one I have is a cleanup kit for vomiting and diarrhea. Hopefully, all of you are set here. This was a requirement when we adopted the 2013 food code, that you do have procedures for how to clean up a vomiting or diarrheal incident. It's strongly recommended that you have a cleanup kit. I mentioned this here because often these cleanup kits will have the goggles in them. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. And then finally, a new regulation requirement that came out for COVID-19 is there's a new labor law poster that has to be available. So step number 2 is developing procedures on all of these new recommendations. So for example, we need procedures, and whether it's in writing or at least so that everybody understands, for when employees enter a facility. And it's not just for your employees, but delivery people, maintenance people. This procedure for entering would incorporate things such as everybody entering must be wearing a mask or some type of a face covering. It may include on this procedure that anybody entering the facility washes their hands or uses a hand gel or a hand wipe when they come in. It might include having employees sign off on a symptom sign-off sheet that they review with their supervisor, the PIC, whether or not they have any of the COVID-19 symptoms, which, as you all are probably aware now, it's no longer just fever, cough, with shortness of breath. There's a whole host of other symptoms associated with this now. Also developing procedures on cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. So chances are pretty good all of you have procedures on cleaning and sanitizing. You have been doing this since day one. This is not new, it's not rocket science here. Ideally, you should have some procedures for this, but the new one, again, is disinfecting. Sanitizing and disinfecting are not synonymous terms. Sanitizing is what we've always done in the restaurant industry, where we are killing 99.999% of the germs or the bacteria. Disinfecting was pretty much used in like nursing homes or hospitals or long-term residential care facilities. Disinfecting is killing 100% of viruses and bacteria. Another big difference between the two is the chemicals that are used. Not all sanitizers can be used as disinfectants. The amount that is used, the amount of contact time, most disinfectants require contact time of anywhere between 2 and 10 minutes, whereas the sanitizers you've been using for years, it might be 10, 60 seconds or up to 2-minute contact time. Another procedure that you need to have in place is what are you going to do with your menus? Ideally, I would tell everybody not to have any type of menus, but I do still have some clients that want to use their standard menu in the menu cover. If this is the case, you need to have procedures on how that's going to be cleaned and disinfected, because a menu, just like stair rails, doorknobs, light switches, are a frequently touched surface. So should have some procedures there. Condiments would be another one. No longer can you have the bottles of ketchup or mustard or salt and pepper shakers on a table or available at takeout, because again, that's going to be a frequently touched surface. So we need to transition from those to portion control condiments, maybe the little ones that come in foil packets that are available upon request. Procedures for cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces. This is probably the one that people have the most difficulty with. I'm working with a couple of places, and I've been working with them for weeks. The first week I went out to this market, they said they had a half a page of frequently touched surfaces. So they had listed the doorknobs and the refrigerator handles and the POS system and the computers. And then a week later I came back, this list doubled in size. And then a week later I came back, it was about 2.5 to 3 pages of areas they identified requiring cleaning and disinfecting because there are so many. And then finally, there needs to be procedures in place on how you're going to handle social distancing. And this really is going to vary and be different from place to place. But you need to think about some of the social distancing in the front of the house, the social distancing in the back of the house. How is that going to happen? Do you have enough space in the front of the house and the back of the house to still operate with the social distancing? One of the things that I'm hearing, which I think would be wonderful, especially that we're able to do this time of the year, is the ability to use sidewalk space in some of the dining areas. Perhaps some of the street turned into a single lane instead of a double lane, having maybe some of the sidewalks come out into the street. So hopefully that will allow for more tables and chairs so that you don't have to cut back by 75%. Step number 3, critical component here is training your staff. Number 1, you can't assume that all of your employees have the training and understand exactly what COVID-19 is about. And part of this training is talking about what the symptoms are, talking about what to do if they're symptomatic, when they need to call in, talking about what you need to do, what they need to do if they've been exposed to either a confirmed case or a suspect case. We're getting calls like this every single day. Somebody's been isolated or somebody's been quarantined. When can they come back to work? So all this should be included in that training. And then some of the basic COVID-19 mitigation procedures or protocol. I assume that everybody's familiar with these, but it might not necessarily be the case. So talking with your staff about what social distancing means, talking with them about what it means to disinfect versus sanitize, to talk about how to put on face masks properly, how to wear gloves and put them on. I have found in some of my training when I'm going in to review COVID-19 symptoms and mitigation procedures that people were not even putting on their masks properly. And believe it or not, there's a proper way and improper way on how to put on masks, how to put on and take off your gloves. But part of this training also needs to get back to the basics of food safety. Now that it's mid-May, end of May, it's been 2.5 months since places have been open. You need to review some of the basics of food safety, because if it's not being practiced every day by people, it's not going to be natural when they come back to work. So in addition to the COVID-19, talking about the basics, time and temperature control, how to prevent cross-contamination or contamination issues, proper cleaning and sanitizing, setting up the dish machine, setting up the 3-bay sink. So those would be important considerations as well. Training, I have certifications in here. I was doing a webinar yesterday and I happened to have several health inspectors listening in as well. And certifications, obviously we all know we need to have a manager or PIC certified in ServSafe. Massachusetts also requires the allergy certificate. In some establishments, if you have more than 24 seats, you have to have somebody trained and certified in ChokeSafe. What our inspectors were saying yesterday is that if they are recently expired, not a big deal. They will let you, they will give you an extension, a month or 2 months or 3 months to get those up to date. But if you have some certificates that are significantly expired before we had the shelter in, they are going to want to make sure that you have people trained and certified. Another issue that one of the inspectors brought up is they have, since the shelter in, a lot of your employees might be gone. You're going to be hiring new people. So these new people, if they're not certified, they need to get certified. I talked a little bit about employee health. Employees need to be healthy coming into work. If they have any symptoms of COVID-19, obviously they cannot come in, but they need to feel comfortable reporting to their supervisor if they are symptomatic, and not to blame them for being sick or symptomatic. We are all dealing with this pandemic together. And then the last thing here, I did mention, I'm training them in donning and doffing masks and gloves. Now, before I move away from this slide, one of the things that I want to point out, in case I forget, because I forgot this yesterday, a big part of our COVID-19 reopening action plan is, in addition to all of the guidance, we call them knowledge-based articles. Every one of the knowledge-based articles has information in writing. It has links to websites. We read information. We also have, for most of them, audio recordings of this information. For the staff training, what I have done, initially it was an agenda that I put together for my clients, and then later they said we don't have the time to put together presentations. So what we've included is an English 18-19 minute video on the COVID-19 training issues. So if you didn't have the time to sit down with your staff or develop your own, open up the app on your phone, have somebody sit down and watch the 18 minutes of video. And it goes through all of the COVID-19 symptoms, mitigation procedures, employee health issues. As of tonight or tomorrow morning, we will have our Spanish version available as well. The Spanish version is the exact same information, but it's about 24-25 minutes long, so that will be available as of tomorrow. So we have this both in English and Spanish for the training. So moving on, the next part of this.
Lisa, can I pause you right there? We have a couple questions that have come in on your last slide, and why don't we take care of those and before we move on. The first question is, if an employee has symptoms and we send them home, how long do we have to keep them off the schedule? We currently are keeping them out 2 weeks, and if no symptoms, we allow them to return.
Okay. There's two types. Let me try to answer that. There's two types of stay-at-home requirements. One is a quarantine. If somebody is quarantined, it means they've been exposed to a case and they need to stay home for the 14 days, which is the longest incubation period. If somebody is symptomatic, and especially if they have some of the classic COVID-19, there's two separate set of requirements. I'll just talk about one. If they're unable to get testing, they need to stay home until they are relatively symptom-free for 72 hours. Now, when I say symptom-free, if they have a fever, they don't have a fever for 72 hours, and their other symptoms are starting to resolve, and it's been 10 days or more since their symptom onset. So I'll say that again. So if you suspect that they are a case, whether they have a positive test or not, or just for the classic symptoms, they need to stay home until they're 72 hours after their fever has to have resolved for 72 hours without taking a fever reducing medication. Their other symptoms have to resolve, and it has to be 10 days since their symptoms began. Now, if they're using the test method, if they had a positive test, they have to have 2 negative tests and then 10 days after that second test. And also something to help in this COVID-19, we call it the RAP plan, Reopening Action Plan. We have a whole section, a Q&A section on that. And we also have a section, one of the questions that we're getting quite a bit is, what do I do if somebody had was a contact or close contact with a case? Well, there's even a definition of what a close contact is. So all of these FAQs are in the COVID RAP. Was there another question?
Yes, there was one other question. Are there easily accessible formats for sanitation and COVID-19 specific procedures?
Can you ask that again? I'm not sure I understood.
Is there an easily accessible format for sanitation and COVID-19 specific procedures? Is there a checklist or a form that people can go to? Is there something that you provide? Where could people get those steps?
Okay, absolutely. So this is what we did. The entire action plan we have in writing, and then we do have a checklist that you can open up on any smartphone, and it's from our website. And I'm actually going to go to the website after I get through these slides, but our website is called Food Code Pro, and there's a button on there that says COVID-19 resources. And then you'll see a checklist. It's loaded on your phone, and it goes through all of these different items that you have to make sure in compliance before opening, from the social distancing, from the disinfecting. For each one of the items, if let's say you weren't filling it out but asked your manager to fill it out, if they didn't understand what the question was in the checklist, there's a little question mark that they can click on, and it goes into a lot more detail. So the answer is yes, we do have this available, and I will show that. I'd like to get to that maybe in 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. Were there any other questions on
Perfect.
this?
All set. Thank you.
Okay. So step number 4, notifying any of your business partners of anticipated opening. Number 1 here, I have the health department. And the reason I have this is for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we have been working not only with the FDA, but the state and local municipalities on how they plan to handle restaurants that are going to be reopening. So Boston, for instance, said, we are not going to require any checklists. We're not going to be requiring any opening inspections. We are going to have them open knowing that they will follow the governor's recommendations for businesses. Another town that we're working with in Massachusetts says that they will not allow anybody to reopen until they have been inspected by the health department. And then we're hearing something kind of in the middle. Health departments say, we don't have the staffing or resources to come and inspect every single establishment that has closed down, but we require that you submit some type of checklist or form to us that you are in compliance. And the checklist that I'm going to show you will satisfy those 3 requirements pretty much, because this is a program that's also to be used by a health department. But also it's important to notify any services that you have, so trash and recycling, pest control. Not only do you need to notify them when you're opening so you can get them back on schedule, but if you've been closed for a couple months, you don't know what's been going on inside. So you need to have an evaluation, make sure if there's any issues, they can handle that before you get open. And then vendors. Your vendors are having the same issues that you're having. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough staff. Maybe people have been sick. Maybe they've been shut down. So notifying your food vendors, your beverage vendors, your florists, the people who supply the linens, etc. So step number 5, this is a big one. So I'll try to go through this relatively quickly because I don't want to run out of time here, because one of my biggest problems is talking too much, I've been told. So step number 5, preparing the back of your house, preparing your kitchen. Distancing in the back of the house is probably one of the most challenging things that people are dealing with. Generally, the back of the house doesn't have as much room as the front of the house. So how are we going to do this? Are we going to cut down in the number of people who are going to be working during a shift? If this happens, maybe the menu has to be changed. We do have a client that decided their kitchen was big enough that everybody could come back to work, but they were worried about them crossing over into each other's workspaces. So they put big trash barrels in between the work areas to assure that 6-foot distancing. I've seen and heard other places putting tape down, kind of like they do in grocery stores, using construction cones. One of the suggestions that I had talked to somebody about, instead of having 2 prep tables face each other with the prep people facing each other, maybe push them against a wall and have people face in opposite directions. Staggering work groups. I'm working or was working with a place in Seattle, and what they have decided to do, because they're open now, is they have a team A and a team B. And on team A, they have the general manager, the chef, the sous chef, the dishwasher, the bartenders, the servers, the same on the B team, and they don't ever mix. So if somebody on the A team gets sick, you're not going to have to shut down because you have an unexposed B team. Break rooms is another thing to consider. This is where people congregate during their lunch break or dinner break. So if your break room is not big enough, it's gonna have to temporarily be shut down. And this time of year, it's not that big of a deal, especially on a day like today when it's gorgeous outside, that people could take their breaks outside, but that's something to also consider. Also in the kitchen, I did briefly mention the cleaning and disinfecting of frequently touched surfaces. So if you think about walking around your kitchen, everything that we're touching the refrigerator handles, we're touching the slicer, the light switches, if you have some POS system in the back of the house, the prep tables, everything that we're touching has to be cleaned and disinfected. In terms of cleaning and sanitizing, whether you're using a high temp dish machine, a low temp dish machine, or a 3-bay sink, if it's been months since you've been open, you need to make sure that they're working, that your water is getting hot enough. You need to make sure that you have all of your little test strips. You need to make sure that you have the irreversible temperature device that you're running through a high temp machine. I do find in places if they've been closed for a while or maybe have been providing very minimal service, these things start to disappear. But you need to follow basic food safety precautions that we've done before COVID. So making sure that you have your soap and sanitizing buckets or spray bottles available at all your prep areas when you begin opening and prepping. Another thing, talking to some health departments, is what they're finding with people opening up is that during the shelter in or the closing down, that they have turned off or down their utilities, they've turned down their water heaters, they've unplugged their refrigerators, they've defrosted their freezers. So to go through and make sure that your kitchen is ready to operate. Are your refrigerators still working? Are they clean? Do you have, I was in a place recently and it literally looked like people just walked out. I opened up a refrigerator and there's really old moldy food in there. So going through, throwing away things that are expired. If you are going to be providing additional services, such as takeout and delivery services that maybe you haven't provided before, you need to make sure that you have enough hot holding equipment. Do you need more? What you have, is it working? And then also some of the physical facility issues. So obviously hoods need to be serviced. One of the things with hoods though, chances are, depending on the frequency that your hoods are maintained or serviced, even though there may be an expired sticker on the outside, let's say it expired last month, if you've been closed, your hood repair people may be able to extend that, but you would have to get some documentation from them to show your health inspector. But another issue with being closed down for weeks or months is the water is stagnant. So 2 issues with the water, so flushing water lines and cleaning your ice machines is when water becomes stagnant, mold can grow. In addition to that, there's another pathogen called Legionnaire's, if you've ever heard of Legionnaire's disease. It is associated with water, usually like in misting units in a grocery store or like in hot tubs, but this would be another reason that you need to be conscientious of all your water lines. And in this action plan, I do have specific instructions on how to flush all your water lines. Front of the house, and I keep looking at my clock so I don't take up too much time. Again, distancing, that 6-foot distancing that we're hearing all the time. So things to consider. We're hearing that your tables need to be 6 feet apart, but actually it's 6 feet apart from the seats that are pulled out. So really, if you're measuring that distance, it needs to be between the chairs pulled out from the table where people are actually sitting. It's not between the tables. If you actually measure between the tables, you're probably going to get about 8 feet. So make sure between the people you've got 6 feet. If you do have a bar in your restaurant, one of the recommendations or things that I had seen is having 2 seats together, separated by 6 feet, another 2 seats, or maybe all of each individual seat separated by 6 feet. But with the bar, also if you think about a bar, make sure that people are not standing at the bar, talking to the bartender, ordering something. We need to have enough distance between the bartender and the customers. All self-service has to be completely eliminated. So no buffets, no salad bars, hot bars, soup bars, no coffee self-service, soda self-service, all of that has to be completely eliminated. All utensils, if you're in a fine dining restaurant, seat the people first and then you can set their tables. You can also have utensils pre-wrapped, use disposable utensils. I did mention that at all entry points, you do want to make sure for your guests that you do have some type of hand sanitizer, whether it's a gel or a wipe. I did mention the condiments, making sure that we don't have the shared condiments. The very last thing, and then I am going to jump into the action plan, is the other parts that are just part of being human living in this COVID-19 era. We're hearing this every single day. I'm seeing commercials on TV right now about wearing your masks or your cloth coverings. Anytime you go in public, you're going to be within 6 feet of somebody. You have to have your face covered. It's also critically important that we are washing our hands, and that's another part of the training video that I mentioned. But washing hands with warm water, soap, scrubbing for 20 seconds is really going to do a number on getting rid of this virus. But also working with your staff on cough and sneeze etiquette. It sounds silly, but if you can't grab a tissue and sometimes a cough or a sneeze comes on suddenly, we need to make sure that people are aware to use their elbow, that we don't want to just sneeze or cough in the open. And then the last 2 things, when people are sick, do not visit sick people. When you are sick, you've got to stay home. So the next thing I want to do, and this is going to take me a second to get out of this screen and up to another screen. While I'm doing that, are there any questions at this point. And I'm trying to, if somebody on your end can tell me what you can see on my screen.
Lisa, we can see you.
Just me, beautiful. So I'm gonna reshare. It's hard in this program. I have to jump out and jump back in. Make sure I have. Okay, I'm hoping that you're able to see. I'm now in a program in online. Can you all see my computer now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So somebody had asked where you can find this information. So our website, if you're able to see here, and I'm actually moving my cursor around here, it's called Food Code Pro. And when you come into this website, you'll notice a blue button here that says COVID-19 resources. And I'll give you a quick tour of this, a quick tour of the checklist, and then I'm going to stop speaking so I can open this up to questions. But when I open up this, and I am going to scroll down, you'll find some information about the reopening action plan, which we call the COVID wrap. I have a little detail about the inspection. Somebody had asked about what to do when somebody's sick, when can they come back to work. So I do have 7 FAQs here. When we start getting a lot more questions, we will put them up here, but right now this is pretty much where our questions are coming from. And then you'll notice that I have a button here that says start the reopening action plan, the wrap inspection. This is how you actually get into the checklist on your phone. So I'm going to click here to show you what it will look like, but I actually did start one to save time. In order to use this, you do have to register, but this is a completely free program to anybody in the country, whether you're a food service establishment, a mobile truck, a grocery store, or a health department. This is a free program that anybody could use. But I started one just so I didn't have to waste your time filling in all the pertinent information. And I'm actually going to shrink my screen so you can roughly see what it would look like on a phone. Can you see looking somewhat like a smartphone on your computers?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I was
Okay,
on mute.
So the way that this program works, and I'm going to try to end this in 5 minutes and be available to answer questions, but every one of these tabs, it's an accordion style tab, and you would basically start at the beginning asking for your establishment details. I already filled this in, so I didn't have to waste your time, but you'll notice it's asking who's using this form. Is this a health department? Because they can use it as well. Is it an establishment? If it's an establishment, we ask here with the drop-down menu, what type? And the reason for this is the questions in the checklist are specific to the type of establishment. So for example, in a grocery store, in a market, you have to have senior only hours. You have to have lines kind of tracking through the grocery store. You have to pay attention to your high risk areas like the cashier area or the deli or the produce section. Whereas if you check a restaurant, it's not going to have any of those questions. So I'm going to select on restaurant, and then you fill in the basics. So the name of the establishment, the address, the establishment contact, who's doing the inspection, and then it will walk you through each one of the questions that's part of your checklist. And again, I filled this out so I didn't have to waste your time typing this in. But there's 2 types of questions. One is a question that you will answer by answering yes, no, or not applicable. And then there's another one that's just a checklist that you check off that those items have been completed. So here I have supplies ordered. I clicked on no, and then you can put any notes that you want in here. So for example, I don't have all the supplies because I'm not able to get a supply of contact-free sanitizing gel. This is one piece of advice that we got from the New Hampshire Food Protection Program. It sounds like some of their health departments and health inspectors are going to start using this, but they felt like it was important, particularly for a health inspector, if an operation was going to be adding any new services that they haven't ever performed in the past. So this is a checklist for that. I indicated that training is critical, so every one of these items should be incorporated into training. Now, the question mark that I referenced earlier, next to each one of these questions, there's a little gray circle with a question mark. If you click on that, it has information about staff training. I have some links to the website, and you'll notice at the very bottom, there is a link to a video. And this is the video that you can literally sit down, give this to your employees, sit down, and it will cover all the COVID-19 mitigation procedure recommendations for a restaurant. And I also go into detail about how to put on and take off a mask, how to put on and take off gloves. So we have another tab that asks some of the more questions. For example, have you developed procedures for entering the establishment? Do you have procedures to assure frequently touched surfaces? And again, on this question mark, if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you gave this to your manager to fill out and you're going to look for the report later, if they didn't know what you were talking about, they can read information about the difference between a sanitizer and a disinfectant. Is their disinfectant approved by the EPA? There's a link here to see if what you are using is on the approved list. So like I had mentioned before, all the information from the CDC, the EPA, the FDA is incorporated into this one plan. I'm going to keep scrolling down. I have a whole separate section here on social distancing. So the tables in the front of the house. This is a funny one. I think any woman listening in on here can understand what I'm talking about. Restroom etiquette. You come out of a movie theater. In the women's restroom, we are standing there shoulder to shoulder waiting for one of the many stalls to open up, which in the COVID era, this is a problem. So we have a category called restroom etiquette. But we talk about the break rooms, cold storage. I mentioned it's important to make sure that your refrigerators are maintaining temperatures, so all food must be maintained at 41 or colder, that you have thermometers available, that you've discarded any expired, moldy food, frozen food that's no longer frozen. I have a whole section on cleaning and sanitizing here. So again, it's asking if your surfaces have been cleaned and sanitized, your food contact surfaces, and then it will ask what type of method you use for cleaning and sanitizing. If you check low temp chemical machine, it will then do a drop down question specific to that type of machine. If you then also identify you have a high temp machine, it will then prompt you to answer questions about the high temp dish machine. For example, is it reaching a final rinse temp of 180? We'll answer yes here. I'm going to jump down to facility. I mentioned hoods are operating. They've been recently serviced. Light bulbs. This sounds silly, but are all the light bulbs working? You need to have enough lighting so that you can see what you're doing. Making sure that your hand sinks are stocked, that your restrooms are fully stocked, that if you've had any, I mentioned water. I realize I'm gonna have to change this question. You need to make sure that you've flushed all, like the warewashing machines, the ice machines, the beverage mixing machines, spray misters, etc., because the water after a month or 2 months becomes stagnant. The very last accordion menu here is pretty much a summary of the self-inspection. So we could put additional notes in. So if it's you, the operator, you can put in all looks good, ready to go. If it's a health inspector, they could say looks great, ready to open, whatever notes you want to put in here. I'm just going to put in good. You do have the ability to send this report to anybody you'd like. It could be sent to your supervisor, the general manager. You can send it to the health department. If you choose to do that, you probably want to see the report first. So there is a sample draft report that you can quickly review of this report before it gets sent out to that person. So if I identified, would you like this to be emailed to your health department? You could say yes, we would send it there. We need to sign it. I'll put my name as the person doing this. If you wanted to send an additional copy of the inspection to somebody, you would type in their email address and then you would submit the report. When you press submit, it will send it automatically to your email. And then if you identified somebody else this report should go to, it sends it to them automatically. And the next window, I don't know if you can see this or not, it's relatively small, but you can also download the PDF from this final report here. And I'm gonna do that and show you what the final report would look like. Which means I'm gonna have to jump out of this window and jump into another one. All right, the very last thing, and then we'll get into questions here. And I will make, I just wanna make sure that you can see the screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, so this is what your final report would look like, whether it stays internally or whether you submit it to the health department, the supervisor. Another thing about the reports is if you decide you want to do this on a regular basis, because the governor's recommendation for businesses is that you do have these reports available. They don't need to be submitted to the health department, but if the health inspector comes in, they need to be made available. If you're doing this inspection every single week, it will keep a history for you, but the report has all your contact information. Every one of the checklist items will identify what's been done. If you have any notes, and I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger, it will put your notes in there. And then on the very bottom of this report, it will have your signature and the date of the inspection. I have gone about 5 minutes over time. I do apologize. It's a lot to cover in an hour. It's a lot to cover in 5 hours, but I would like to now leave the rest of our time for any questions, comments, issues. I do want to say it's completely free to anybody. Share this with anybody and everybody across the whole country. One of the reasons why we put this together is I've been doing this for 23 years and I've gotten so much out of this industry. I really wanted to help and give back. So I'm hoping this makes the reopening a lot easier for you. And between you and your health department, I think this will make them feel a lot more comfortable that you're doing this safely. And I think it's really good for customers. They will have the confidence in coming to you knowing that you've done everything in your power to prevent illness from spreading, not only from employee to employee, but to your customers. Now, I promise I'm gonna stop talking until I get a question.
Okay, Lisa, thank you. This is a great presentation. We have time for a couple of questions. First one that came in, is the COVID wrap usable on the website from a desktop or laptop in addition to the mobile app? Is it compatible with both? All of the above. Perfect. Yes. And then we've had a couple of questions come in regarding the specific reports. Best practice, should the checklist be completed by a manager at the individual location or at the corporate level? And do you foresee each individual city and town requiring this?
It can be done at any level. I can see managers doing it and sending it to corporate. I can see corporate coming in and doing it for each one of those locations. We do not have guidance yet from Massachusetts as to what they are going to be requiring, but my suspicions is this is where it is going. Health departments, because it is a business, not just because it's a restaurant, but because it's a business, you do have to have some type of an action plan, which here you have. You do have to have some type of a self-reporting or self-inspection. So if the local inspectors are following the state initiative that they've had for other businesses, this is something that they would require. You could come up with your own, which is perfectly acceptable. You could have, a daily checklist that you have on a clipboard with a pencil, that would be fine. But we just felt, why reinvent the wheel? It's here, it's easy. I don't know anybody who doesn't have a smartphone. So it's an easy program to use.
And just one other point to add, Lisa, as you made the point about self-certification and self-inspection with other businesses. You have local boards of health that are going to be investigating businesses, or they're now charged with businesses that they've never had to inspect before. So us in the restaurant industry, we've always had to deal with them, and we've always been regulated and inspected. So just being able to set yourself apart by checking the box for them, so that they don't have to spend a lot of time in our operations, and they can focus on the hair salons and the sporting goods stores and the haircut places that they haven't had to focus on in the past. I think it would definitely be better for our industry.
Absolutely. And this is what I'm hearing from the health inspectors. This is pretty much on them. Their funding has been cut, their staffing has been cut. If they know that you, Lisa's Luncheonette, you followed this and you filled it out, I don't have to worry about you. Thank you, good job. I'm going to go deal with somebody else who needs my assistance. So this will go a long way with making your health inspector happy.
Right. Okay, and we are at about 52 minutes or so on our webinar, so I want to thank everyone that has participated today. All of Lisa's resources are available on the MRA website, in addition to other reopen resources that are out there. Please head to the MRA website if you are looking for more information, and thank you for tuning in. And this webinar will be recorded and sent out for other people to be able to view. Lisa, thank you very much today.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.